place your hand in front of that chakra. So if we were cleansing the third chakra, we would place our right hand in front of our third chakra, and we would take our fingers and move them in a clockwise position 12 times. And at that point, you literally feel like you're cleansing that vortex of energy. And then you take your left hand in front of the third chakra and you move the fingers in a counterclockwise position 12 times. And then you do that with each one, and you literally feel a difference.
Namaste. You're listening to the Sivana Podcast. Join us on an exploration of Eastern spirituality, yoga philosophy, and conscious living for the new age. This podcast is a production of SivanaSpirit.com, the best place to shop for unique clothing, spiritual handcrafted jewelry, healing gemstones, and fair trade gifts from the Far East. Now, here's your host, Brett Larkin.
Hello, friends. I hope you've had an amazing week. Welcome back to the Sivana Podcast. Today's conversation is going to be rich and juicy. We have the beautiful Erica Jago with us. She is an accomplished graphic designer whose book, The Art of Attention, was ranked #1 for book design on Amazon and is now translated into 7 languages. She's currently working on her second book, Angelus, which is all about the chakras. So we're going to talk about the chakras today, self-development, our spiritual identity, how to identify our soul as compared to our ego. I'm so excited. And before we dive in, I just want to remind you to join the private Facebook community so we can all connect and talk more about yoga, meditation, life, and the show at savanaeast.com/group. So I would love to see you in there. And Erica, thank you so much for coming on and being with us.
Thank you, Brett, for having me. It's a pleasure.
Tell listeners, just in case they don't know, just in very basic terms, what the chakras are. And then I'd love for you to also share with us something that surprised you the most as you've gone really deep into your chakra studies and developing this book.
So chakras, you can just think of them as these centers of consciousness that when you focus upon them, they help develop your personality and your behaviors. And out of the 7 chakras that we focus on in Angelus, each one has certain themes. So when we focus on the root chakra, we learn to release and let go. We learn how to face our fears. And we learn how to deal with our past. And then following the sensations up the spine to right below the belly, you land in the second chakra. And this is a place where we learn to let go of control. There's a sense of fluidity here. There's even a way of really learning how to nurture and be our own mother in the very womb of the belly, whether you're male or female. And then further up the spine is the place where the apex of the ribs, right where your ribs meet. This is your center. It's where you define and redefine your purpose and your mission in life. And we can really learn how to value ourselves and work on self-esteem just by sitting in that place of center. And you'll feel it. It's actually at the heart, which is the next one up. The heart is up and to the left. So you can really feel how the third chakra is your center, and the heart is more along the place of learning your emotional center when it comes to giving and receiving, and how to love and be loved. And this is a place of forgiveness, really catching ourselves every time we get off center, learning how to bring ourselves back into the heart. And then by the time you move up into the cylinder of the throat, there's a lot that needs to get filtered. This is where most of our blocks come when we're speaking about self-expression or speaking up. And just speaking or just working into the throat, we start to learn how to let go of judgment. We start to learn how to really define our core through our originality and our authenticity. And then all the way up into the third eye. As you can see, it's a very complex system. There's a lot going on, but by the time you get to the third eye, you land in this place of really having a vision for yourself, these higher perspectives, higher thoughts, and then knowing that as you float to the crown of the head, there's a connection between you and your guides. And that's a huge system to know and to navigate all the time. And it's never enough just to breathe deep. This is why we feel like it's so important to teach people this system that's innately built in each one of us.
So I want to talk about Angelus, this incredible experiential chakra workbook that you've been developing, because obviously this is a podcast, so listeners can't see the book, but listeners, this book is full of costumes. And I mean, it's like stepping into MoMA. And it's like each chakra in this book has, again, so much color and vitality. I'm not butchering the description, but Erica, tell us about Angelus and how it's different from any book about the chakras that's ever been put out there.
Thank you. That was a great description. Yeah, Angelus is an experiential chakra workbook that uses visually powerful art, emotionally connected yoga to give you the experience of each one of these energy centers along the spine. And so it has 21 yoga sequences that are depicted through asana glyphs, which are illustrations that I draw in order to show the poses, or at least the progression of poses that you flow through. It uses that with emotionally connected talking points, and it journeys with a heroine in the story that moves from the basement of her house all the way up to the roof of her house. And each room in the house represents one chakra at a time. And what makes this so different is that because it's less about the intellectual knowledge of the chakras, it's more about this experience as you journey through, watching this girl flip the switch from this point of weakness in that energy center to this place of strength. And it's supposed to be inspirational.
So how did you come up with, because I know there's so much creativity in this book, how did you guys come up with sort of the idea for each of the rooms in this house and for each of the chakras? Maybe you can just give us one or two examples.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way I approach everything when it comes to my yoga classes, to designing my retreats, even to the books that I design, there's a creative process in it. I've actually done 14 yoga retreats now, and there was a way that I would start to design these retreats. I would look at the amount of days that I had, the people that would attend, and I looked at where I had a vision of where I wanted them to go and what I wanted them to experience. And then I would start breaking down each day of how I could use touch points, talking points, experiences, artist times in order to reach that understanding. And after documenting all of that, I started to see this theme with the people that would attend. And so then we took that experience and we said, okay, let's have this book that people can use at home, because there was a lot of reasons why people couldn't leave their everyday lives to travel and attend these retreats. So then the question became, well, how do we make this book experiential? And with my first book, Art of Attention, that was really what made it so groundbreaking, was that there was atmospheric photography and there was the illustrations in it, which really helped with the intuitive connection with the chakras. So at that point, we knew we wanted a heroine, and it just started to make sense that if you started at the very base with the root chakra, then this is one of the hardest places to reach. It could be one of the scariest, because this is where you start to deal with fear. And then that made sense with the basement. And it's even been proven too that if we learn better when it's told in a fairy tale sort of way, and in this cinematic way of doing it was a way to reach people intuitively.
And tell us more about how people experience, whether it's on the retreat or through the books, why it's so important we experience the chakras on this intuitive level. Because I think so many people, myself included, we know what colors go with what chakra and where they live along our spine and, the basic associations. But it sounds like what you're really trying to do is almost silence all that logical knowledge we have and give people a direct connection. And I know you mentioned artist time in the retreats. Can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like and how literally creativity and art have impacted you personally, and then how those work in the book?
Yeah, well, the first thing that came to mind was just, how do you even know that a chakra is in balance or out of balance? And usually when there's pain or suffering in your life, then you know that there's something that's not in its flow. And that's ultimately the first place that we look. And with the tendency to disassociate from this pain and not want to be in our bodies, we have to find ways to reflect and go in and bring meaning with a lot of our contemplation practices or our creative practices. And on retreats, we dedicate an hour and a half every day to do some sort of expression. That can be taking a nature walk and just slowing down a little bit, getting yourself to start to see how nature reflects some of the situations or the memories or the wounds that you're dealing with in your life. You could look at a dead leaf and start to see that as something that you're ready to release. Or you could look at a budding flower from the tree and see that there's something inside of you that's really trying to come into its fluorescence. And then as we gather those pieces from nature, we come back to the shala, wherever it is that we meet, and we take a blank sheet of paper and we just give ourselves that meditative time to start playing with paint, tearing the flowers apart, looking at mandalas and these symbols of self actually start to guide us. It's a symbol of like, well, this is what I was in the past, this is where I'm going in the future, this is a vision that I have on how I want to partner with myself right here and now. And then that starts to make the unseen seen, and it really is you being guided in a very visual way through downloads, vibrations, and frequencies.
And you mentioned something before that I think is a very common question, which is how do you know these energy centers are in balance or out of balance? I know you touched on it briefly, but can you go a little deeper with us for folks who are curious about that?
Yeah, the indicator is when you're having pain and suffering in your life. And that's where we go to focus and where we learn to put more of our love. And so these deeper questions that we ask, this is part of our spiritual identity of knowing where did these memories, where did these thoughts, where did these feelings come from, and how can I start to take action? And thanking the pain is doesn't make sense as a concept that we just don't understand sometimes, but thanking the pain for being there in your life, because really pain is the only thing that's going to start to break you open. Otherwise we would never turn in, and by turning in, that's where the transformation happens. So we thank our pain, we understand why it's there, and then we work very tenderly and very compassionate with ourselves to learn how to flip that switch so that we can start to reprogram every cell in our body to start to function with those higher value systems.
So if someone listening is experiencing perhaps fear or perhaps anxiety, or perhaps they're really looking for love or trying to enhance a particular relationship, what's the best place for them to start? Is it most appropriate for them to really hone in on one particular chakra? And can you talk a little bit about how these systems work separately, right? Each chakra is its own individual thing, but it's part of our whole self, right? They're all interdependent on one another. So what's the best starting point for someone who's like, I want to improve my life by looking at everything through the lens of this chakra system?
Yeah, that's what's so fun about the retreats that I design with Mari Sierra and if not with her, then on my own, is we focus on one chakra at a time. And I used to believe that we could do that, but what I'm finding out more and more through experience is that this energy starts to loop through. So I just got back from Mexico City, and we focused on the third chakra for one entire week, and we were asking ourselves, when am I my most authentic self? Or am I connected to my purpose and my power? Am I serving the world? Am I on my path? And we did exercises where we would work with 100 questions. This is a technique that was introduced in one of Da Vinci's books. And by asking 100 questions, we gave ourselves an hour to just write down everything that came to mind. And then once we did it, it was just a flow of consciousness. Then when the questions were on the piece of paper, we would look back and we said, well, are there certain themes that my soul's seeking? And then we started to see these certain areas where we were putting more of our focus, where something much larger than ourselves was seeking things like, can I be a better teacher? How can I be of service to my friends? How can I be a better mother?
And these questions are questions that each person is coming up with.
Exactly.
So it's just things I'm asking myself.
Yeah, and it's very enlightening for people to see how different their questions are from the next person, and you really start to understand your own uniqueness.
So this sounds fun because I think me and maybe listeners would want to do this at home. So how does it work? I literally just write out 100 questions, and it could be around anything, or we could tie it, for example, to a particular chakra like you all were doing on this retreat. So, with the third chakra working around issues of self-esteem and authenticity in particular, and I just write all my questions sort of in a notebook until I have 100?
Yeah. And it takes a while, and you get distracted, and you start to daydream, and you keep coming back. And even if they're silly questions like, what am I going to have for lunch? How many hours of sleep did I get last night? Just keep going, because as you and I know, the truth lays about 6 layers deep, and you start to hit something, and you really start to ask the bigger questions. And that's what you're trying to capture.
And at some point in this process, do you then shift to journaling the answers, or do you just put the questions out there?
Yeah, so we didn't get to the point where we wanted to answer the questions, because we don't necessarily have to know the answer to that. We just have to trust that there's something inside of us that's going to lead us to that. And we wanted to know the overall themes at that point. And then we worked further on looking at, well, what could be stopping us? Like if we found out that we're really wanting to be better teachers, or we want to be more in service with our community, or helping the earth, or heal the waters of the earth, then we start saying, well, how can I start to do that? But more importantly, what's preventing me from doing that? So we always go towards more of the darker side, more of the shadow work. And we started to to study the characters that were like maybe lurking, the ones, and we did this in a ritual dance. It was called a soul awakening dance, where we went through the 5 rhythms, and we said, when did these negative criticisms or inner blunts or self-sabotagers come to surface? Was it when I was dancing one-on-one with someone? Did it happen when I was on my own? Or we even got into a group setting. Did it happen when I was on stage and everyone else had to watch me dance? When did my insecurities come out? And then rather than repressing those insecurities, we started to give them names. We started to name our characters, and we started to just befriend them and say, oh, okay, so here's Nervous Nancy or Debbie Doubter. And this is a train of thought that is consistent. I'm constantly fighting and up against this train of thought. And then we said, going into nature and start looking at how you could have an exit strategy, or how could you talk back to this negativity, and just starting to look at ways to strengthen your authentic self rather than strengthening the part of you that wants to sabotage.
We have an episode on shadow work. I would love for you to tell us more about your take on shadow work and a little bit deeper on this archetypal work that you're talking about. I know so many mindfulness and meditation books have suggested, I think maybe it's a Jack Kornfield book where he talks about naming the demons, right? So like naming the different voices in your head, like that negative Nancy and, Debbie Doubter and all of that kind of thing. But I'm curious how this ties together with the chakras and what we're moving into talking more about, which is like figuring out your spiritual identity.
Yeah, I love it. What we did to evolve, so once you identify and acknowledge, which as you know in every spiritual book is the first step, just acknowledge the fear, acknowledge the one who's self-sabotaging. Then what I worked on with Mari Sierra is the archetypical energy. We said to ourselves, and this is from inspiration from a Carolyn Myss book, it's called Internet, or the Inner You. I can't remember the exact name of it, but we looked at 5 very current and modern archetypes that are available to us right now. And just for those who don't understand archetypes, they are compressed ideas of images, feelings, and roles that are just sort of floating in the air. And there have been identified 64 different archetypes that we could step into. And this is a beautiful way to transform those negative aspects of ourselves. If we have a tendency to self-sabotage or be the victim, then if we know that just lurking in the air, that there's this currency that a visionary can step into, or a caretaker. A caretaker is a type of person or an archetype that knows the importance of taking care of themselves. Or the visionary is the one who understands that inspiration is the one that's going to motivate people, and they can start to speak their visions to people. Or an advocate can give a voice to someone who doesn't have a voice. And so we introduced these 5: spiritual seeker, a visionary, advocate, caretaker, and artist. We said these are 5 archetypes that are floating in the air right now. Which one do you relate to? And next time you find yourself in these shadow aspects of yourself, how can you remind yourself that this is who your spirit or your soul is really seeking to be? And they were able to identify. Some of them said, I have all of those archetypes in me, or no, I really relate to the spiritual seeker, or I really relate to the advocate. And so then knowing that that's a possibility, you're able to flip the vibration of your thoughts and your feelings really quickly, because you remember the vision of who you want to be. And then even to take it one step further, we started to make power objects as a way of reminding them. So everyone has an altar at home. Here on retreat, we made power objects with nature, golden thread, golden tassels, so then they could go home and place that power object on their altar and even meditate it with it daily, so that it starts to create an exit strategy next time you're sabotaging.
This podcast was brought to you by SivanaSpirit.com. In ancient Indian mythology, and even today, chakras are considered to be the most important energy centers in the body. It's been said that when all 7 energy points are aligned, deep spiritual development occurs. When the chakras come into balance, they bring harmony, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. In fact, sometimes when we feel off, it's really just these energy points that need to be worked on. Celebrate the 7 chakras with a beautiful must-have chakra tank. Printed down the spine with sophisticated metallic ink, the chakras are represented by unique hand-drawn symbols. You can add a pop to your style with elegance, all while reminding yourself of the deeper spiritual truth of our world. Use the exclusive discount code PODCAST30 for 30% off your first order today. Do you want a $25 gift card from SivanaSpirit.com completely for free? It's super easy. All you have to do is fill out a quick survey with 7 short questions, and then you'll be emailed your gift card to use whenever you're ready. This survey will help us better understand the most important thing in the world, you. Go to savannahspirit.com/podcast survey today and claim your reward. Again, that's savannahspirit.com/podcast survey. Okay, so I definitely want to talk to you more about exit strategies and sabotaging, because I think we all need more information on that. But before we do, I was just curious, because I was coming to mind, as you work with people and students on these shadow aspects of ourselves, and as even we and listeners start to think of these shadow aspects of ourselves, these voices in our heads that are not productive, not helpful, are you seeing that these character traits, these shadow people, line up with specific chakras?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So for example, because I'm so fluent right now on the 3rd chakra, like the self-sabotager, the victim, the martyr, these are all archetypes that really don't understand their self-worth, and self-worth is located at that place of the 3rd chakra. Yes, definitely.
And just to give an example, because I want to make sure people really get it, can you give an example for a different chakra, like some of the sabotager archetypes for like either heart chakra or root chakra?
Yeah, like for 2nd chakra, when we worked on our feminine power, and for the 2nd chakra, we worked on that 2 years at Lamar, we worked with the archetypes of the seductress, the wild woman, the maiden.
That's really cool. So I'm seeing, and hopefully listeners are too, how some of these ancient roles are very much integrated with the chakra system. And is it true, or is part of the reason why you're teaching people to connect with these archetypes is because we realize that it's not just us, right? Because like archetypes are universal and they've been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. So if you feel like you have this wild woman within you, or if you feel like a victim, it's all of a sudden like, oh no, that's not just a voice in my head. This is an archetype,
Universal,
like an energy that's out there, and it's just like this universal currency, vibration, whatever you want to call it, that I can tap into or not, that's been around forever. Is that what makes working with the archetypes super helpful?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Archetypes hold deep universal themes. All human beings, no matter what your race is, what your genetics is, whatever conditioning you have, you can grab a hold of this energy and you can use it to help you transform your lower frequencies into higher frequencies. Yes, use them.
We've been talking about kind of negative archetypes. So I don't want to use the word negative, but do each of these have like a positive counterpart? It sounds like, because from what I remember you saying, it's like more that instead of replacing a maybe negative archetype with a positive one, it was more about finding an object. And, you know, we've had people come on Sivana who've talked about like crystals, or power of like just being able to hold something as like a reminder that you have a choice. You can shift your attention, shift your energy. So I want you to go into more detail about that, about how that works. Are we like trying to attach to a new positive archetype, or you mentioned something about power objects, and I want to make sure we capture that.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I understand the question correctly, but I think we're looking at, if you identify with something like the victim archetype, how do you transform that?
Yes, exactly. And do you do it through using another archetype, or through an object, or some other way?
Yeah, that would be great. To look at the victim as someone who doesn't want to take responsibility for themselves. And so if you're looking at like, well, where don't I want to take responsibility? You could start looking at your fears. Or what was really nice on the retreat, we had one girl who was just victimized by this idea that our waters are being hurt, and what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to stop the pollution in the waters around the earth? And so having her step into the archetype of an advocate to really learn how to not only find her own voice, but to give everyone else around her who doesn't have a voice, such as the water, give the water a voice. And that was so inspiring for her, because then she could transform her pain into a higher purpose.
So we're talking about lining up an archetype like the victim to something like the 3rd chakra and then transmuting it to step into this feeling of being powerful, basically.
Yeah, being an advocate, for sure, definitely. Yeah, it's an exit strategy to move from the lower frequencies to the higher ones. It's a vision, and it's something that you can study that has many different dimensions when it comes to meaning, imagery, feelings. That's just written through the universal themes. It's known to do that.
So tell us more about these exit strategies, because I'm very curious about them. So if I'm feeling, whether it's like a victim or I feel like I'm unlucky in love, for example, with my heart chakra, this exit strategy, it seems like it's like a brain wiring thing where you're reminding yourself that you don't have to be in that train of thought or connected with that particular archetype. But tell us a little more, because I think there's more to uncover here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if we're understanding, it's not enough just to breathe deep. Like sometimes just coming to the yoga mat is not working. And what we're advocating in Angelus in our book is that we are trying to teach you the systems that are innately in your body. And if you can identify some of your the characters that are lurking in the dark for you, where you know that this is something that triggers you and you know that this is a point where you want to put more love, just by identifying that and then saying, okay, next time I'm in this situation, next time I get triggered, what can I do to help myself? And a power object is a piece of artwork that has a lot of intention in it. Not only did you go into nature and you found a piece of nature that really resonated with you, and the resignation is that it sparked a light inside of you. So there's some sort of truth between you and that piece of nature. You brought it back to your home, and then you started to build a relationship with it. You started to work with it intentionally, using something that you find beautiful. And as we all know, beauty, artwork has this ability to make us pause. And that's what we want to do the next time we're reactive, is we want to pause. And so you can go on our website, lamaryogaretreat.com, and you can see some of the examples of artwork that people have done. Even on my Facebook and Instagram, I have them. The power objects look like wands, and the wands could even be used next time you're in ceremony. So if it's really about energy. You could use this power object as a wand to create some space with you. Start to make an agreement between you and your space, saying, take your wand, point it toward the north, go all the way down towards the west, towards the south, to the east, and then back up to the north and say, this is my space. This is where I'm claiming my energy. I only want the highest of good to come into my energy. I only want to work with the best of the spirits, and this is what I'm in agreement with. And you can do that. And a lot of us don't understand that we can work spiritually in that way and start making contracts with our space.
And in addition to that, I know that the book and so much of your work incorporates the yoga sequences. So in addition to everything you're talking about, you can also do a specific asana practice for a specific chakra to balance a specific chakra. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in the second chapter, we have the girl going into the bathroom, taking that first step of taking care of herself by drinking water. And the second chakra is related to water. And she sees the reflection in the mirror, and then all of a sudden she sees traits of her mother. And she realizes that she has a lot of resentment towards her mother. And she has some sulking and that's coming up. And so she starts to cry uncontrollably. And then her tears start to fill the bathroom, and she realizes that she's drowning. She's becoming very rigid. She's approaching the relationship with her mother, needing approval from her mother, and all of this is not making it any better. And so as she sees herself in the mirror, this very rigid and tense state, she sees the ugliness of that, and she starts to release it. And as she releases, she begins to float to the surface, and as she comes to the surface of the water, she takes a big, deep breath. And then the story continues, but as she takes that big, deep breath, a sequence that follows is 5 different pranayama exercises that you can do to help with resentment, to help with the sense of anger, to help with sadness, to help with forgiveness. And so, yeah, definitely a way to support you when you're feeling those things and as you relate to the girl in the story.
So what is chakra clearing, which is, I know, is a term that has been tossed around and we've also talked about. Is that an example of what you just gave? She sort of cleared her second chakra?
Yeah, she cleared it through a breathing exercise. One of the things that Mari shared on our retreat was a chakra clearing where you actually place your hand in front of that chakra. So if we were cleansing the third chakra, we would place our right hand in front of our third chakra, and we would take our fingers and move them in a clockwise position 12 times. And at that point, you literally feel like you're cleansing that vortice of energy. And then you take your left hand in front of the third chakra and you move the fingers in a counterclockwise position 12 times. And then you do that with each one, and you literally feel a difference. That's a chakra clearing.
Beautiful. I want to ask you now about this idea of spiritual identity and go into a little bit of the soul and the ego. So I want to tie it together with all the juicy stuff we've talked about so far. So when we're talking about these archetypes or these personalities that live in our brain and body, like the negative Nancy or the doubtful Debbie or whatever, do you consider that our ego, or is the ego something else?
Yeah, the ego's fear, from what I understand it. It's a word that I didn't even connect with until recently. A lot of studying with Gabrielle Roth has helped me understand what the ego is. And I also think it's more because I'm really starting to understand the soul as well. And I feel that the ego sort of comes in to kind of block the soul's path. And yeah, what was the question?
No, I love it, because I do think ego is a word that gets tossed around a lot. And I think your simple definition of just it's fear, it's what's blocking your soul, it's what's blocking your purpose is really spot on. How would you define, or what's your current definition or thought on our soul? Is it love, just the opposite of fear?
I mean, I like the idea that it would be love. I think of it more as the part of us that's seeking something, that sort of feels the sense of urgency, like there's something I need to contribute here in the world. That to me is the soul.
And how is that different from your spiritual identity, or is it the same?
When I focus on third chakra, I focus on these themes. I focus on awakening the soul and the spiritual identity. And the spiritual identity, as taught to me by my teacher, Lisa Nielsen, is just basically saying this is who I was in the past, this is who I'm going to be in the future, and then really identifying authentically with what you're wanting to do. Like if you're trying to partner with someone, this is how I want to partner with them. If you're trying to be more of a contributor in your community, this is how I'm contributing. That's the identity.
There's nothing more essential to a gemstone collection than rose quartz, and SivanaSpirit.com has a beautiful selection you'll absolutely love. Use the code PODCAST30 at checkout for 30% off, and we promise you and your heart will be thankful. And how do the chakras make up this identity, or do they, or are they interconnected in some way? Like are certain chakras being in excess or in deficiency, like contributing to your identity in any given moment? Or is it more about attaching to a spiritual identity that sort of guides and leads us?
Well, many of us don't know who we are.
Yeah. Because I'm sure many people are listening to this and they're like, how do I even begin to know or understand what my normal identity, let alone spiritual identity, is or should be? Like, let's give them practical tips.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like, who are you when you have the persona of going on Instagram, and who are you when you're around your friends, and who are you when you're by yourself? Just those things, those answers don't come to you until you sit in moments in quiet, or you have an experience of that. And that's why I think it's so important on retreats, is to really give people different containers to really express who they are in different scenarios and in different exercises. So whether you do what you want for someone else, or if you do it for yourself, there's a way of communicating to that. And by focusing on the root chakra, you are saying that this is a lot of my past. These are the things that sort of haunt me from my past that I really need to let go of before I can really allow myself to be who I am. And you have to learn to let go of that in the second chakra. You have to learn how to breathe deep and create intimacy with yourself and let go of control before you can really, and actually a big one too is safety. You know, if you're having addictions, or if you're self-sabotaging yourself, then how can you create safety for yourself and not outsource that? If you're depending on someone else to do something for you that you know you should be doing yourself, then do it. That's part of building your identity and creating a safe place for yourself. It's coming into your power.
It's coming into your power. And would you say that, again, because I think these terms of a chakra being in excess or a chakra being deficient, both of those things are unhealthy. So does the power really live in that place where the chakra's in balance? Is that an approach that or philosophy? Like how can people think about like what does it even mean to like balance a chakra, right? Or experience some chakra healing?
In Reiki sessions, I use a pendulum over each chakra, and if it's moving in a clockwise position and it's a nice big circle, then that's an open vessel of energy that's flowing in. If it's counterclockwise, then there's something cleansing. Sometimes the energy is completely stagnant, but the most beautiful thing is knowing that just by placing the most loving and kind attention on that place in your body begins to open it up. And that's how you reestablish yourself. You can begin to ask yourself, if I'm stuck in this area of my life, where did those patterns come from? And how did this chakra system get programmed this way? And it's a progressive journey. That's why the girl goes from the basement to the roof of her house. It symbolizes a journey that we go through every day, over all 4 seasons, over every decade, and there's no incompletion. This is an evolution.
I like that you use the word evolution, because I wanted to ask you why are you so passionate about this now? Like, why now? Why this book now? Why this focus on the chakras as a way to really deeply heal now? And I know you also are a Kundalini yoga teacher. So I'm curious, because I always like to ask Kundalini yoga teachers about this idea of the Aquarian Age, and if that ties into anything that you're doing or working on as well.
It does. It does. It's Yogi Bhajan who said that we're going to be moving from the age of intellect into the age of intuition. And so that's what we're really trying to do, is we're trying to create an experience for people to have at home with the book by their side, with a journal, to go in and ask themselves these bigger questions, without a doubt.
So we'll definitely be letting people know where to get the book, because it's beautiful. Tell us a little bit before we close, I know you've studied the chakras so in depth, and you've led these retreats all over the world, each focused on a different chakra, which is so cool and special. I'm curious, in your own personal practice, like as you've gone deeper with all this work, like what surprised you about the chakra system, or what's kind of sort of thrown you for a loop or been surprising or unexpected in either your discovery in going deeper with the chakra system, or just in how one particular chakra can affect another, that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, being nomadic, going around the world, I've had to really learn how to create my safety no matter where I'm at. And the entry of coming back home into my space has really been dependent on my more advanced travel practices. So I work with friends and family who help me, even the people that sublease my apartment. They clear and cleanse my space with sage. I like some fresh food when I come home, some flowers, or something that makes me feel like I've arrived into my space, because all 4 of my bodies, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, knows that when I walk into that space, I've just traveled sometimes up to 32, 36 hours, and I need to be able to land and feel the decompression of my travels. And knowing that focusing on a center in my body, like my second chakra and my root chakra, to create that safety, even if maybe, say, the place wasn't, maybe the subleaser I had didn't have the same cleaning standards as me, and so I have to come in and clean, I don't know, like an example of that. Or I rent a place in Amsterdam and I show up and I can just feel the soil of there has got some trauma or something in it. Like my body's that sensitive, the same as yours. And we have to learn how to make those agreements of saying this is what I want in, and then learning how to clear the chakras when our body takes on something that's heavy. Because that's what our human bodies do. They want to transform lower frequencies into higher frequencies. And if it's trying to transform something that's in the ancient soil of Amsterdam from some sort of war or some sort of energy that lived in the house before, I don't have time to do that. I'm here to work on a book. I'm here to do my teachings, And so I can say what I want to do and what I don't want to do. And that was like a revelation for me when it came to working with these vortices in the body. It was just being able to say, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, this is what I'm working on, and then help me keep my energy clean and safe.
I think that's really interesting, because it's like, even if you're picking up on energy, whether it's the soil and where you're living, or maybe negative energy from another friend, family member, coworker, that your first step is remembering that you have that choice to say, like, I want to take this energy on or I don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, because you look at the different land, like Hawaii is all brand new soil, but somewhere in Amsterdam, which is like, centuries old, my body feels that. And there's also a collective consciousness that's different from Hawaii to Amsterdam. So every time we travel, there's so much being processed, and it takes an endurance, what I've found. This nomadic life is a life of endurance. You have to not only take care of your bills and your emails and everything else that's going on, plus do your work while you're there, but learn how to take care of your body. And the chakra system has been beautiful for that.
And for people who are even just not traveling, but maybe they just have, again, that negative coworker or mother-in-law or whatever it may be, I think it can be really hard for people to think like, oh, well, I just don't take on their energy. It's like, how do I do that? Like practically, do you have any like tips you want to share with people?
Yeah. I have a medicine bag that I carry when I travel. In that bag is my 7 chakra stones. And as soon as I get into my new space, I know where north, south, east, and west is. So that helps navigate my 4 bodies. And then I put a stone in each corner. I have those stones programmed with my intentions of what I'm going to do while I'm there. And so this is something you can do in your own home. And then I sage the place. And then if ever, so the moment you walk in through the door, you can leave those energies outside. And even taking that area and maybe circling it in salt too is a really good way to help clear the area. But as soon as you create that safe space for you, it doesn't matter. As soon as you walk in the door, you'll feel a big difference, and I did.
Sounds like just creating a simple ritual to remind you that your space is sacred, whether it's the room in your house or your whole house, helps you feel empowered that you have a choice in terms of what you want to take on and not take on.
Yeah, setting the sacred space and having energetic agreements with that space.
Before we go, tell us what your personal practice looks like as someone who is traveling, is working very hard, is obviously very, very deeply committed on their spiritual path. Are you practicing yoga in the morning? Are you practicing in the evening? Are you journaling next to your mat, as you know I love to do, and we both love? Like, what does it look like right now today for you?
Well, I just finished a 7-day sadhana with a private where we went through 1 chakra at a time. So my practice began at 6:30 every day with her. And then I'm starting to read the Gene Keys. So at nighttime before bed, I get into bed an hour early and I read and journal. And then now starting tomorrow, I'm starting an 11-day sadhana with the Kundalini Yoga School in Amsterdam. So I have to keep it fresh, and I love to collaborate with people. So I'm always like looking for someone to do something with me to keep me accountable.
I think that's such a great tip, because especially listeners and people who practice at home, it can be really hard to get motivated. So buddying up is a great way to make it to your mat. When you say sadhana, does that mean you're getting up very early to do that practice?
Yeah, well, right now I'm waking up around 6:30, and then I'm on my computer by 8:30. So yeah, it's not 4:30, but close enough for me.
I'm still impressed. Erica, it's been really fun to talk to you and get to go, I think, deeper into a lot of these topics that people are really interested in, like the soul, the ego, the chakras. And for listeners who are looking for just kind of like a basic understanding of the chakras, there's an earlier interview I did with Erica, and I can also link up, I'm sure, some on Sivana here as well that give more of a basic overview. But just because Erica is such an expert, I really wanted to go deep in this episode with her. So I hope you've enjoyed it. And most importantly, now that we're at the end, Erica, how can listeners connect with you? And even more important than that, how can they get your hands on this gorgeous book that I know is coming out in 2018, right? Right in January?
Yes, 2018. My co-author Rose Vanderkamper and I were the artistic duo that's really putting together these emotionally connected yoga, visually powerful art. It's available on angelusbook.com, and that will lead you to our in-demand page. And there's all kinds of perks for you to choose from. We have chakra lighters to help enhance your altars at home. There's a House of Yoga subscription if you want to practice with me online. For all the yoga schools out there, you can get the book at 50% off for your yoga school, anyone who wants to go through the chakra systems as a curriculum. So there's many options on there. Go check it out and see which one's right for you.
Yeah, guys, so you can pre-order the book right now. You don't have to wait till January. I pre-ordered mine in months and months ago.
You're the ones who helped us raise the money. So we raised $50,000 in 30 days, thanks to Brett and everyone else. Really nice.
Well, I can't wait to see the finished product of the book, and we'll definitely put your website below the podcast as well, so people can also connect with you and explore your retreats, which I can't wait to go on another one of those as well. So Erica, thank you so much for being with us. Listeners, let me know, did you relate to any of the concepts we talked about today? Was this a little too out there, or did you love this sort of like deeper conversation of going really into the chakra system with Erica? I I would love to hear from you. So the best ways to do that are in our Facebook community. It's a totally private community. SivanaEast.com/group is what's going to redirect you to the Facebook page where we can approve you as a member. And of course, your ratings and reviews here on iTunes mean everything to me. We want your honest feedback. So if you haven't taken a moment to give the show a rating or review on iTunes, even if iTunes isn't how you normally listen, would love for you to take a moment to do that today. It really does make a big difference and gets the show in front of more listeners just like you. Thank you so much. We hope you have a beautiful day full of meditation, yoga, and of course, maybe some chakra healing work as well. Big hugs from my heart to yours. Namaste.
You've been listening to the Sivana Podcast. To find out more about Sivana, go to SivanaSpirit.com or follow Sivana on Facebook at Facebook.com/Sivana Spirit. For daily inspiration, check out our blog at SivanaEast.com. Be sure to join us next week for a new episode, and thank you for listening to the Sivana Podcast.